So once again, welcome to the Unshakable Foundation meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. This is a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Sheldon, who's come to share for up to 40 minutes on the topic CA works, after which we'll open up for the Q&A portion of the meeting. So Sheldon, with that, it's over to you. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, my name is Sheldon. I'm an addict and also an alcoholic and generally just a pig. I really like to do anything that will change the way I feel. I did a lot of coke, smoked a lot of crack, made a lot of freebase, but I actually did cure my cocaine addiction with crystal meth. I found it was quite effective. It worked very well. I am sober today, 27 years, 364 days. Tomorrow will be my 28th birthday, which I'm quite excited about. I got sober when I was 28, so I suppose tomorrow I will have been actively involved in 12-step recovery officially for half my life, which if you're new, what they told me was the way that happens is you don't do any coke and you don't do any other drugs and you don't die. And if you can do those three things, you can also be clean and sober for a long time. So I'm grateful for that. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. My home group is the Common Solution Group, and my sponsor is Charlie H. And Charlie knows he's my sponsor, which is important. If you have a sponsor, it's important that they know that you're your sponsor. And that you're in constant and regular contact with them, and I am that with Charlie. I wasn't born in Las Vegas. I was born in Leeds. I moved to California when I was 16, and then ran all over the country in America, and ended up in Las Vegas on a runner. I was drunk and I was high and I was a mess and I had nowhere to go. I had one friend in the world that would let me sleep on his couch. You know you're in trouble when you've not only lost your place to live, but you've lost the right to sleep on people's couches. And some people homeless well. I don't homeless well. So I moved to Las Vegas to the last couch on the block. And that was in January of 96. And in July of 96, I was finally able to get and stay sober. It wasn't my first try at getting sober. About 3 years prior, I'd hit the skids. I got very lucky. When I was very young, I was a fairground pitchman. My family had we had booths at Doncaster Market and Dewsbury Market, and we worked the home shows and exhibitions. My grandfather was a pitchman, my dad was a pitchman, and I became a pitchman. I got lucky, and I actually ended up on American telly. I ended up on Home Shopping Network and QVC and infomercials. And at 19 years old, I was the American national spokesperson for Kenwood, which would be a great job if you're not a hopeless addict. The problem for me was that they gave me a lot of money and they only wanted me to work 3 days a month. And they gave me an adult wage at 19 to work 3 days a month, which gave me a lot of money and a lot of time and led me to doing a lot of drugs. So why I was an addict? I was an addict before that. And after I lost the job, I remained an addict, but it was an interesting time in my life. They fired me. When they fired me, I knew why. That's one thing about being a drunk or an addict, is that we always know why bad things happen to us. And we always look for someone to blame. And there was a guy at the company called Bernard. You could tell what kind of guy he was because he called himself Bernard, right? So you know right away what kind of guy he was. But Bernard, he didn't like me, and I decided it was his fault. I'm a Jewish kid, and I decided that it was because he didn't like Jews, and that's why I fired him. In the exit interview, when they let me go, they didn't say it was because I was a Jew. They said that they didn't think it was appropriate for them to have an alcoholic drug addict as their national spokesperson, which I thought was an overreaction to the situation. But, it was their world and I was just walking through it, and I lost that job and I got another good job and then another good job. And then I couldn't really get a good job. And then I couldn't get a bad job. And by the time I was 25, I don't know how it happened. It's funny how we don't really know, do we? It all happens. I mean, not really slowly. It happened in 3 or 4 years, which isn't all that slow, but it feels like it happens slowly. Making bad decisions and compromises and getting involved with different people and getting involved in different stuff. And the next thing you know, I can't get a job and I'm homeless and I've got nowhere to live and I've got no money and I'm in trouble. I can't go to my dad's house. He won't let me in anymore. Can't call my mum for any more money. My stepdad won't let her answer the phone. I've got a couple of warrants out for my arrest. I've got drunk drivings I've not taken care of. No major offences, but little minor things that have added up. And I don't know. I had a friend that had gotten sober, and I thought maybe getting clean and sober would be a good idea. And I'd been successful at everything I'd tried, so I thought I'd be successful at that. And at 25 years old, I went to a detox center, a dry out place, 7 days, government funded, low bottom place. And I went in there and I actually had a bit of hope. I thought it might be all right. I thought, I'll go there and you lot will teach me how to be sober and you'll teach me how to, get it together. And I thought, well, I'll be all right, and I went in there and 7 days, got some hope. There were people there that seemed to know what they were talking about, seemed like they might have drank and did drugs the way I drank and did drugs. And I thought, oh, this might be all right, I'll stop, or maybe not stop completely. I mean, I don't really believe any of these people that are saying they're completely sober. I mean, they're having a drink every now and again or a spliff or something, they're doing something. But, they seem like their lives are together. And so I'll go hang out with them and see what happens. I left there. I went to a men's recovery house. I called my halfway house here. I went there for a bit. I thought, I thought I was going to get clean and sober and I get a job back on telly or something. I thought, I'm looking around the room thinking, these lot, most of them, what are they going to do? They're going to get clean and sober and get a crappy job somewhere and have a crappy life. But I'm going to get clean and sober and I'm going to be Mr. Wonderful again. It's going to be all right. Sober about 2 weeks in this halfway house. And something happened to me that was really very surprising. I didn't imagine for a minute that it would be this way. I thought that I would get sober and my life would be great. And part of it was my own thinking, but part of it was that I thought that everybody around me had always said it. They always said the same thing. You're a good bloke, you're smart, you're clever, people like you. If you just quit doing drugs and you just quit drinking, you can have a world, you can do anything you want. They made it seem like drinking and doing drugs are the problem. And it looked like it because I didn't get in trouble every. It's not like every time I had a drink I got in trouble, but it's like most of us. Every time I got in trouble, I'd had a drink or I'd do some blow or something, right? I mean, it just seemed that way. So anyway, I quit drinking, and it's been a couple of weeks, and it's amazing what happens. To my surprise, I thought that stopping the drugs and the drinking, I'd feel all right. But really what happens is I start to feel worse. And it's a worse that's hard to describe. It's hard to admit. It's difficult to talk about because what happens is I start to feel awkward. I start to feel out of place. I start to feel a bit, I guess, shame and guilt. I start to feel afraid. I can't even put my finger on it that it's afraid. It's almost like later in recovery, I've learned that that's what I felt like. But I'm short-tempered and everything bothers me, and I'm uptight, and I've got this gnawing feeling going on, and I start to feel like there's something else wrong with me. I don't know what it is, but there's something else wrong with me. It's not the drugs and the alcohol. I just start to feel like I don't know. Now I'm sober about 25, 26 days, and I don't think I can do this. I don't see how I can live my life like this. Like it's like I've got an edge on me. It's like I've got this uncomfortable anxiety, and I've got to do something about it. And I know what to do. I know what to do. I know how to do. And listen, this is what I've got a plan, and this is a good plan. This plan makes perfect sense for me. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna go get an 8 ball. I'm not gonna go crazy. But here's what I'm gonna do. I'm not even gonna do any coke. I'm not gonna do any meth. I'm just gonna have a couple of drinks, just one, you know what, maybe two, 3 at the most, no more than 4. I'm just gonna have a little bit of something just so I can breathe, just a little bit, just something so I can go, you know what I mean, take the pressure off. And I'm not even gonna tell anyone. Why would I? I know you're all doing it anyway. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have a couple of drinks. Tomorrow I'm gonna come back to the meeting. I'm gonna pretend nothing happened. And I think what I'm gonna probably do is every couple of weeks, I'm gonna do a little bit of something, and I'm gonna be mostly sober, and it'll be none of your business. So I have a couple of drinks. Surprise number two. Surprise number two. I never imagined this would happen. I have a couple of drinks, and the next thing you know, I have a couple more, and then I have a couple more, and then I go get something to stick up my nose because something has happened, and I don't. It's by surprise. Next thing you know, it's 2 days later. I'm broke again. I've not shown up for anybody. I'm straight. This don't make any sense. I'm a strong together. I mean, I was on TV for fuck's. I mean, oh, excuse me. I mean, I'm like, I'm all right, me. I come back to the meeting and I've got that look on my face. And the guy comes up, what happened? I tell him what happened. I said, I don't understand. And he says to me, wait a second. You've got a thing called the phenomenon of craving is what you've got, which I don't understand. Phenomenon of craving, fancy words. It turns out phenomenon means something nobody understands. So I'm not that daft after all, I guess. But he explains to me, he says that when you start drinking or you start doing any drugs, something happens to you. It doesn't happen to everybody. Most people, they have a bit and they can stop. But when you start, game's over. You're going to go all the way till you run out of money or you get stopped or something happens. So something against your doing is going to happen to make you stop. And you've got this thing and that's what happens to you and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's going to happen every time you drink. And he says this thing that really bothered me. He says, you will drink and do drugs against your will. Well, I don't understand that because I don't think I've ever had a drink or ever done a drug against my will. In fact, I've wanted to do all of them. They've all been my will. I've never once said, no, I don't want this. No, not for me. No, thanks. But I'm forced to do it against my will. Like somebody shoved it up my nose or down my throat or something, or pushed the pipe in my mouth and made me, you'll do this. No. Here's what happens to me. The phenomenon of craving, which is a real thing for me, happens like this. I have 1 or 2, 3 or 4, somewhere between 1 and 4, with all my determination and with all my absolute might, where I've sworn I'm not going to do much more than 2 or 3 or 4. Everything in me has sworn it, I've promised. What happens to me somewhere between 1 and 4 is I change my mind. I change my mind and it becomes a good idea. It becomes a good idea for me to spend the rent money. It becomes a good idea for me to steal your stuff. It becomes a good idea for me to lie and borrow and beg and steal. It becomes an idea to shut myself in the bedroom and lie to everybody. It becomes a good idea for me, knowing full well what's going to happen. I'm not going to go to work tomorrow. I'm not going to do anything I said I'm going to do. The people that are relying on me are going to be mad at me. I'm going to end up in trouble one more time. It becomes a good idea. It becomes my idea. And I do it again. So I decided, right, I'm going to try again. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to try again. One more time. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to try again. So I try again. But at that 2-week mark, or sometimes 2-day mark, but at some point I get that empty, lonely, frustrated, anxiety-filled feeling again in a state of abstinence where I can't live like this. And eventually, having gotten drunk and gotten sober and gotten loaded and gotten sober and gone back out and come back in, and done this for a couple of years. Sometimes, getting 1 day, sometimes getting 4 days, sometimes getting 3 weeks, never getting more than a month. Sometimes after going in and out for a couple of years, I tell someone, I can't do this. I don't know how to live. And they say, you know, your problem is, Sheldon, is that when you get in that uncomfortable state, you start thinking, you've got to live like this forever. I said, I know, I do. That's what I think. I think I can't live like this forever. They say we don't do it forever in CA. We do it one day at a time. And he says it like it's good news. Oh, we do it one day at a time. Oh, one day at a time. But to me, what it sounds like is we're going to do this one day at a time. One long, miserable, painful, horrible day at a time. And we're going to do it that way forever. And what you really promised me, it sounds like, is I'm going to go to meetings every night, 7 o'clock, show up at the church or wherever the meeting is, and you're going to say, how are you doing? And I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm doing lousy. I'm doing horrible. It's miserable. I hate being sober. I don't like it at all. I've got a terrible life. I feel like crap, but at least I'm sober and clean. For you. And you're going to say, about the same, see you tomorrow. And this is how I'm going to live my life in abject misery forever. It's going to be horrible. I may as well get loaded. Because it's horrible loading, it's horrible sober. It's loaded, a bit loaded. At least loaded, a bit loaded. July of 96, I showed up and I apologize. I got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. No disrespect, but I'm not going to lie to you about my story. I showed up at AA. And I showed up having made a decision. And this was my decision. My life is going to be horrible. It just is. It's going to be horrible drinking and doing drugs, or it's going to be horrible in abstinence. At least in abstinence, it'll be horrible, but I'll pay the rent. At least in abstinence, I won't be homeless. At least in abstinence, I'll be able to afford to buy food and a car and have a bit of a life. It's going to be horrible, but at least I won't be trying to deal with all the problems, the law problems, the money problems, the job problems. And I resigned myself to have a horrible life and join your miserable one day at a time program. See, what I didn't know is that there are 12 steps. What I didn't know is that if you get a sponsor, and I know, listen, if you knew, I know, but like when you talk to and you listen to it, you take advice. I know it's stupid, but I got one. If you get one, and you get home group, and you get a job in the home group, you know, like they use that word commitment, don't they? And I think they mean convenience. I think, yeah, you know, if I'm there, I'll do it and I'll show up when I can. But they don't. They mean commitment. Like you get a commitment, like you're going to do it no matter what. Like if you're not in the hospital, you're there. Even if there's a good movie you want to watch, or the girl says yes on a day, or your favorite band's in town, don't matter. It's a commitment. Like a commitment. You get a commitment. Go through the book, and you take the steps. And you don't take them like off the wall, like, yeah, I've done that one. No, I'm not doing that one. I'm not doing that one. Yeah, I'll do that. But like go through with a sponsor, under guy, and you do this thing. And then when you're done, you spend your life with a passion, trying to help other people. And if you do that, if you get in it's, you know, an AA nerd, if you or a CA nerd, if you're willing to become that idiot, you know, big book under your arm, going to the meeting, shaking all the hands. It looks terrible. It does. You look at it, if you knew and you're like me, you look at that guy when he walks through the room, oh, here he comes, Mr. No Life, right? Mr. Idiot, here he comes. But if you're willing to become that guy, I didn't know this, but what happens is your life becomes magical. It just does. It becomes stupid. My life is stupid. It's when they say beyond your wildest dreams. I mean, you don't know me, but if it were horrible, I'd have to be a right idiot to have done it for almost 28 years, wouldn't I? But what I found in 12-step work is this. If you get in the middle, if you buy the whole package, if you, as they say, come all the way in and sit all the way down, like really make this your life, you can't put it in words, and I'm good with words, but you can't put it in words. You know, them promises, the 9th step, right? It says that, one of the promises, it says that feeling of uselessness will slip away. It doesn't say a feeling of uselessness. It doesn't say if you've got a feeling of uselessness. It says that one, because we all know that one where you think you're a smudge on society, where you're a waste of skin, the air you breathe would be better off served with someone else. That not only goes away, but I feel like in God's hands, my life has value. When I brush my teeth in the morning, I look myself in the eye and I am not disgusted by the creature that looks back at me. In God's hands. God, that's a funny word, isn't it, for guys like me? I don't know about you, but that was very disappointing. In the big book, it talks about me, right? It talks about the new guy that comes to CA and his life's a mess, and you lot talk about how great your life is now, and oh yeah, I want to be part of this structure. And we've got dances, and there are girls in the room, and we go for coffee, and it all looks so wonderful. And then his face rises, right, as he learns about the fellowship, the book says. And then we mention God, and you're like, oh dear me, that again. Come on. There's got to be another answer. It can't be that. It can't be. I don't want it to be that. Is there another door? I say, well, you either get spiritual ideas or you carry on to the end, blotting out your intolerable existence. Well, I tried that. You can't, can you? They make it sound like that's possible. But my problem is I keep running out of money and my intolerable existence comes to me next time I'm coming to out of a drunken stupor. I can't stay high enough long enough for me not to realize what a disaster I am. I always end up sober in my own skin one more time, feeling like a disgusting animal. That's my choice. But I can't do God. See, I told you I grew up Jewish, but not really Jewish. Like with all the rituals. There's no real God in here. I mean, you know, atheist Jews is what I like to call us. Right, Lancers. Right? And we were divorced. And, you know, in a religious community, if you're divorced, you're a bit of a pariah anyway. Whether they say it or not, you feel like it. Can't be Jewish. It's nonsense. The only thing I learned about being Jewish is I can't be Christian. Can't do that either. Now what do I do? Can't be Jewish, can't be Christian. I'm screwed. All right? And then this says to me, in step 2, I says to my sponsor, I can do step 1, can't do step 2, don't believe in God. He said the maddest thing. He says, you don't have to believe in God to do step 2. I said, of course you do. I came to believe that part greater than myself was stopping. He said, of course you do. You've got to believe in God. Step 3, made a decision to turn me William Life. I've got to believe it. He says, no, you don't believe in God to do step 2. He says, I'll prove it to you right out of the big book. I'll read you the part out of the big book that says you don't have to believe in God to do step 2. But first he says, go ask the people you like in AA, the people, you'd have to like them, but the people you'd like to be like, the people that are, you know, have good lives and they're all right. Ask them why they're sober. Bad idea. Because they all say the same thing, don't they? Somebody asks a member of CA why they're sober. You know what they're going to say. It's like they write it on the card and hand it out. If a newcomer asks you, say this. Sober today by the power of the 12 steps of CA, which has introduced me to a God of my understanding. I'd like to thank God for CA and CA for God and God, 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 God. I go back to him, I said, what are you doing to me? They all said the same thing. God's why they're sober. He said, exactly. And if you could find God in step 2 or step 3, why would you do step 4? It's horrible. 5's embarrassing. 6 and 7, no one understands. 8 and 9, very expensive. 10 and 11, so confusing. Most people think they're doing 10 when they're doing 11. And 12, there's too much good stuff on Netflix to do. I'm not doing any of it. So if God's the answer, and I found God in 2 or 3, why would I do the rest of them? And then he gets out his big book, as they do, and he shows me in the big book on 47 where it says step 2, working part of step 2, where you actually take the step. Lots of beautiful writing around step 2. But how do you take the step? It says something like, we need to ask the new member one simple question. Do you now believe? Well, I says, no, I don't believe. I don't believe. Stop it. Stop it. I'm not going to lie to you. I've been lying for 3 years, going in and out, pretending to believe in God. I don't believe. I'm going to tell the truth now. I don't believe. He says, stop it. We cry. Listen, it's a comma, not a period. Can we read the rest of the sentence? Go on then. Do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe in a power greater than yourself? So what does that mean? Do I now believe, comma, or, which means you don't believe. No, I don't believe, I don't believe. All right, you don't believe, but are you willing? to believe that maybe, just maybe, it's possible. Unlikely, I know, you don't believe, but maybe, is there a chance that you might be wrong? Is it possible you could be a bit open-minded about the idea of spirituality and go on the world's biggest snipe hunt and come with me and go look for your invisible friend? He might exist, he might not, but can we go look? Let's just go have a look around. We'll poke around a bit. How are we going to poke around? Well, we're going to do the rest of the steps. And when we're done with the rest of the steps and you've poked around and you've decided there's no God, that's all right too, because there are some atheists that are clean and sober. I'm not one. I found God on my snipe hunt. I went looking, oh, there he was. He wasn't even hiding that hard to find, really. Made it easy terms for a guy like me to find him. All I had to do was look. But that's my story. It might not be yours, don't matter. Are you willing to, as soon as a man, the book goes on, says that he does believe, which I didn't, or is willing to believe, which I suppose I was, we emphatically ensure him he's on his way. What does that mean, emphatically? It means baggage, it's over, step 2's finished. In fact, if you're new, we just did step 2, unless your sponsor disagrees. Because I'm just the idiot that lives in America. You've got to live with your sponsor. So if he wants you to write a bunch of crap, just do what he says. He's right, I'm wrong, it's all right. But as far as I'm concerned, step 2 is now what? Say a prayer. Say a bloody prayer. So you want me to turn my will and my life over to God? I don't believe it. Yes. Will that make me a hypocrite? Yes, it will. But Sheldon, you have a lot of problems. Hypocrite's on the list, but it's not top of the list. You've got some that are going to kill you. So maybe we'll get to hypocrite later. I've got news for you. They've not done it yet in 27 years, 364 days, but I'm hopeful at one point I'll stop being a hypocrite. Right? I've got some, maybe, but not yet. But anyway, I says, yeah, be a hypocrite. Write the 4th step. Share the 5th step. Don't worry about 6 and 7. Nobody understands them. Don't worry. 8 and 9, start on the amends. Get going. 10 and 11. Start helping people. And what we'll do, and we'll check in periodically. If your life is not getting any better, if you're not any happier, if you're not any of that stuff, if you're still a miserable bugger, then we'll say it don't work, there is no God, and you can either decide to be an atheist or you can decide to go back to drinking. It's up to you. But if we check in on your life, and the only thing you've done is gone looking for God and your life gets better, maybe we can consider that perhaps there might be one. My life got better. I was about 3 years sober before I woke up and said, you know what? 3 years just doing the actions, pretending there was a God, hoping there was a God, looking for a God, acting like a man that believed in God. 3 years sober, I woke up one morning and went, hey, up, I'm not pretending anymore. Hey, up, that there might be one. Well, that's strange, isn't it? And then my relationship with him has grown and changed. I'll tell you my spiritual experience currently, if I had to describe it, it would be that I am a quasi-pagan, somewhat Buddhist, atheist Jew that really loves quantum physics. I don't know God's name, don't know his favorite day of the week, don't know when he wants me to go to talk to him, not really sure about any of it. All I know is he exists, I'm not him, I'm sober, why I'm sober? Because I asked him, he must exist. It's really that simple. And I love meditation, I'm not much for prayer. I don't think he wants to know what I've got to say anyway. That's my personal opinion. You probably need to, by the looks of it, you probably need to pray. I would keep praying if I was you. But for me, I'm much more of a bigger fan. You know what? You should hear the things I don't say. You really should. You don't judge the things I do say. Imagine the things I don't say. 6 and 7. I always joke about them. Only 2 paragraphs in the book, 1 for 6, 1 for 7. Not much said, really. Fly over steps, come out of step 5. Are you willing to have God take away your character defects? You bet. All right, done. Let's get great. It's nice, is that? You show up at your sponsor's house, start in 5. You leave already on 8 and 9. Now we're getting somewhere. Lots of work done in a hurry. Love that. Love that day. But right, we're on hours and weeks on 1, 2, and 3. Days on 4. Come out of 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, boom, we're done. We're moving. I think all we do is 6 and 7, really. I think it's all we do. I think the reason Bill didn't write much in 6 and 7 is because the whole book is about 6 and 7. The whole journey is about me realizing that on my own I can't do now and becoming willing to give it to God. I do 10 and 11. What does it do? It drives me back to 6 and 7. Notice the fear. Notice the selfishness, self-centeredness. Notice the dishonesty. Back to 6 and 7. Live my life. Notice it again. Back to 6 and 7. Everything I do in this program is about finding ways to remove the blockage in me and God. 6 and 7. It's all I do. It's all I do. I'm a failure. I am a failure. I'm a spiritual failure. God made me like that. Why? It's frustrating, isn't it? You'd think I should be able to say a prayer, click me those 3 times, end up back in Kansas. You'd think so. But I don't do it. I continue to make mistakes. Why? Because if I'm actively involved in the program, what do those mistakes do? They drive me back into prayer and meditation. They are the function of which I get closer to God. My imperfection, Wilson said that we are bound by our defects, not our attributes. It is my imperfection, my mistakes, that allow me to become closer to you. And what's the old ditty that they say, right? Sought myself, couldn't see, sought my God, he eluded me, sought my brother, there I found all 3. I always tell the guys I sponsor, listen, if you're looking for a guru, bright and shiny, place your hand in the hand of the higher power, not your guy. If you're looking for a guy that's got bruises and scars and is going to make more mistakes before we're done talking, but he's been behind enemy lines and can help show you the way out, I'm your man. I'm that old battle-scarred idiot that's going to go back behind the front lines, even though he knows better. I'm your man. Because this is a place where flawed people get together and try and hold each other's hand and lead them through the darkness. It's what we do. It's what we do. It's how we survive. I'm a broken, flawed human being. I am an addict too. But I'm not trying to outgrow my humanness here. Sometimes it sounds like that, doesn't it, people from the podium? Well, I remember 5 years ago I used to be a you-know-what, but now I'm perfect and wonderful. Not my story. Not trying to outgrow my humanness, trying to survive it. Trying to survive it with you, hand in hand together. Taking a private, personal, individual journey towards connection only I can feel and see to my own private God, but doing it with you as a group together, hand in hand, trudging the road of happy destiny. A few years ago, middle of the pandemic, business failing, recently divorced, had a stroke. Stroke caused a seizure. Seizure brought me back. Got all kinds of metal in there now. Tough week. Tough time. I'm bedridden. I'm all right now, by the way, so don't worry. I'm all right. But I'm bedridden at the time. I'm laying in the bed. Don't know if I'm ever going to walk again. They're not sure. My girlfriend's got to literally wipe me bum, hold me in the shower, feed me in the bed. Tough time. I'm laying in bed. And I'm in meditation. And I get one of those times, they don't happen all the time, but I get one of those times, those powerful, strong reactions to meditation. 2 or 3 of them in my life only. And I felt all right. And I knew it was going to be all right. A guy sponsor pushes me. He says, well, tell me more about it. Tell me more about it. You can't, it's like trying to describe what a strawberry tastes like. How do you describe a spiritual experience? I tried. And I told him, I says, when I was new, somebody asked me what I wanted out of the program. What I wanted to know that it worked. I just wanted to know that it worked. And for it to work, what that would mean would be that I would have to be able to stay clean and sober one day at a time without a lot of effort. It would have to not be the only thing I think about. It would not have to be a battle. It would have to become easy. I'd have to be comfortable in my own sin, not wanting to get high all the time. I'd have to be able to live a good and easy life. And for that to happen, God would have to be real. I don't see him. I can't feel him. I don't touch him. It doesn't make no sense. But the program would have to work. CA would have to work. And God would have to be real. And laying in that bed, what I thought about was all the trials and tribulations I've had in my life before. What Wilson calls the certain trials and tribulations. When my wife was pregnant 4 times and we only have 1 kid. And seeing the heartbeat and not seeing the heartbeat, bad day. My dad dying, bad day. Stepdad dying, bad day. Business problems, bad day. Financial problems, bad day. Fights and struggles and arguments with the wife, bad day. And I thought about all those bad days. And I thought none of them were terminal. None of them made me get loaded. All of them passed. The joy always came back. And I'm laying in that bed that I knew I didn't know for the first time. I knew I'd always known, but the first time ever I've been able to put words to it. And I told my friend that spiritual experience was this. I knew that CA worked. And I knew that God was real. I knew. I could have just shared for 1 minute. I could have just told you my truth. And my truth is this. CA works and God is real. That's what I've come to tell you today from my experience, my journey, my personal truth. CA works and God is real. And if you're new, take the journey. Get a guide, a woman or a man, someone that you can trust, and take the journey. Walk through the steps. And if you're lucky, you'll suffer from what I suffer from. And if you suffer from what I suffer from, this is the answer. So I appreciate being invited to come with you. I was at least entertaining, if not inspiring. And I'll leave you with this thought.
Question.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Sheldon. They want question and answers. You know I love you. And refer to some people here. When Bob was your sponsor, he said you had coined this, that we heard people in AA always talk about the 3 frogs on the log, and if one makes a decision, how many are left? But he said that you said something about step 7, hearing a splash. Could you elaborate on that for the rest of the crew, please?
Yeah, my pleasure, Bill. So yeah, they always say that, 3 frogs on a log and one makes a decision to jump off. How many are left? And the answer is 3 because it was only a decision. But step 6 and 7 is where there's a splash. Step 6 and 7 is the action of step 3. When you make the decision to turn your way life over to the care of God, finding those character defects and then humbly asking God to remove them is the action of the decision. I hope that helps.
Beautiful. Thank you, Bill. And before I move on to Alan, just got a question in the chat from Monica. In your years of recovery, have you experienced spiritual dryness? And if so, how have you dealt with it?
Well, I will tell you that. That's an interesting question. And the answer is absolutely yes. I'm very lucky that I've never walked away from the program. There's never been more than a week that I haven't gone to a meeting, and you can count that amount of time on one hand. I'm blessed that I fell in love with the program, and I found joy in it, and I've always been active. But I've gone through several stages in my active membership where I've not really been able to sense or feel the power of God. And I felt like I'm praying into a void, or I've even stopped praying. I've gone through periods where prayer and meditation has not been part of my life. I've just done the actions. I've just gone to the meetings, sponsored the guys, read the book, done all the stuff we do, and not really had much connection with God. I'll tell you a story that happened to me. I was in Florida in a place called Fort Lauderdale, which is a beach town. And they have big sand dunes there. And when the tide goes out, the water's hidden behind the sand dunes and you can't see the water anymore. The water disappears. And I was stood on the beach one time seeing this, and it was like the Pacific Ocean, or excuse me, the Atlantic Ocean had disappeared, like it was gone. I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, that looks really strange. But I didn't think someone pulled the plug on the Atlantic Ocean and the water had all disappeared down the drain. I knew that it was going to come back. I knew the tide was going to come in. And my spiritual experience is very tidal. Sometimes I feel like I'm at my toes. Sometimes I feel like I'm swimming in it. Sometimes I feel like the tide has gone out. My practice in this program has taught me that when the tide has gone out and I can't feel connected to God, that feeling will come back as long as I continue to take the right actions and do the work. I hope that helps.
Great question. Thanks, Monica. And thank you, Sheldon, for your answer. Tidal spiritual experience. I love that. Alan, could you please come in with your question? Thanks.
Yeah, am I on now? Yeah. It's not a question, Sheldon. It's just I just want to thank Isaac for putting me on this meeting. It's just weird that you came. You know, you said you're from Leeds, and I just happened to have my Leeds top on tonight. It was the nearest top that I had that I could put on, to be honest. Yeah, it put a smile to my face. Obviously, to relate to somebody from Leeds, but you know, I'm in early recovery. I've been in recovery before. I've been using over 20 odd years. You know, when you got clean, I started, and roughly up the same age as you. But the things you said were just, you know, I'm glad I came on this meeting because, you know, you feel worse, awkward, shame, guilt, afraid, uptight. Something's not right with me. How can I live like this? You know, I've got anxiety, and I have them feel. I still feel like that myself. You know, but I'm in the fellowship now, and I'm really happy to be back again. And you know, your share were brilliant. I loved it, and you know, it made me really happy to come on this meeting and listening to you, Sheldon. I'll get your number as well out of chat. And thanks a lot, and thanks for Isaac and everybody else for being on this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan, mate. It's great to see you, brother. Before I move on to Rachel's question, we got another one in the chat from Ross. Question is, I'm new back from a relapse. What advice can you give me to not get so complacent in my recovery? Thanks.
Someone said that good is the enemy of the best. We get clean, and within a short amount of time, we've been able to pay the rent. We've been able to get a few quid in our pocket. Mum and dad or the wife or whoever is so proud of us, and they're talking to us again, and we start to feel good, and we start to think we don't need this thing. It's very common. There is no advice I can give you that if you do this, you won't be complacent, other than to say, really examine step one. If you really believe that you're powerless and that you will never get that power back, you'll go. I mean, it comes back to revisiting step one and saying, right, you know what, don't matter if I feel good, I'll feel bad again if I don't go. And find joy, find friends, do more. You know, we have a tendency to downplay the fellowship often, like steps. And you've got to do the steps. But the triangle is a three-sided triangle, and they're equal lengths. The fellowship and service work are just as important as the steps. So you've got to get involved in all of it and find some mates to run around with. That'll help you.
Thanks, Sheldon, and great question. Thanks, Ross. Glad you're with us. Rach, would you like to come in with your question?
Hello, everyone. I'm Rach. I'm a grateful recovered addict. Thank you, Isaac, and the service team, Paddy and Gids. Thanks so much for being here. And Sheldon, thank you for your share. 28 years in, and, you know, making it funny and light and, you know, just, what's the word? I can't think of the word. Just really relatable in loads of different ways. And I just wanted to ask about sponsorship and what sponsorship looks like for you today, 28 years in, if that would be all right. Thanks.
First of all, it's 27 years, 364 days. No cake will be taken before its time. But thank you for your kind words. It doesn't look much different than it did when I was new. I mean, I'd have to be able to brush my teeth anymore. I mean, I was given that direction when I was brand new, but I talk to myself every week. I have a Zoom call with my sponsor. He moved, he used to live in Vegas, and he moved away. And so we put eyes on each other on a Zoom call every week for half an hour to an hour. And we talk about things. I mean, we talk about, sometimes it's about the guys I sponsor, but usually it's about my squirmy insecurity, which still plagues me. I'm divorced 5 years, so I'm newly single, and that causes me problems. And I run my own business, and there's ups and downs in that. And we talk about everything, you know. I mean, it's obviously it's different from when I was new because the direction is different, but I try to stay as current with my sponsor as I did when I was brand new, and I've got guys that do that with me also. Half the guys, a very good friend of mine says, when somebody says, how many people do you sponsor? He answers about half of them. And that's my experience too. I've got guys that say I'm their sponsor and I have no idea what's going on in the house. And I have guys that I'm intimately involved. So.
Great question. Thank you, Rach. And Sheldon, I've got one for you just while I wait for a couple more to come in. So you talked really beautifully about how you went from almost like a kind of a non-belief when you came into developing some kind of relationship with God or power greater than yourself. And my question is, you kind of mentioned at the end what that looks like today in comparison. And I'm just curious, over the past 27 years and 364 days, how has that changed over that time? Thanks.
It constantly changes all the time. There's no real answer to that, because to answer that question implies that I'm going to tell you a story and then you're going to say, oh, I'm at that point in my recovery. I can't wait to get to that point when my journey has progressed your place. But some of you are much closer to God now than I am now, and I've been closer to God now than I've in the past, and I'll be I don't know. It's just I'm not trying to have a spiritual event. I'm trying to have an experience. I'm trying to have a journey, not a destination. And it comes and goes. So I don't know how to answer that question other than it's ongoing.
Love that. Thank you. And we've got one more in the chat that we'll end the meeting with. Could you please share your meditation process with us?
Again, it changes. I've done, and this is listen, anything I say, I don't want anybody that does something different than I do to think, oh, do it wrong, because there is no wrong. Wrong doesn't exist in spiritual matters. I've done a lot of guided stuff, on YouTube you can find. I like those. Sometimes I'm on a sleepless night. I like those put you to sleep ones, it's fine. For me, what I do on the whole is I like to close my eyes and follow my breath. And I'm currently in a place in my spiritual experience where I'm trying not to see any separation between me and anything else in the world. I like to focus on that line in the book that says either God is everything or is nothing. Because in the past, I've always seen God as everything and then me separate. But that means if God is everything or is nothing, that means he's the table, he's the iPad, he's you, he's me, we're all one thing. A friend of mine from Minnesota says, we're all just a different set of eyes on the same balloon. And so I like to try and imagine and see myself and the connectedness to the ooze of reality. That I'm a wave on the ocean, and I try to find the connectedness between me and whatever the power is. And it's always funny. I always find myself, when I try to explain spiritual things, feeling like I'm babbling because you can't explain it. But that's my current babble.
Beautiful. Thank you to the person who asked the question. And I see we've got one more hand up, so we'll end the meeting with this question. Jay, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah, thanks, Isaac. Hi, Sheldon. Thanks for your talk. Thanks for your friendship, and you know how much I love you. Just one question: in your 27 years and 364 days of experience, why is it you think? Why do you think that some people stick around long term and do what you do, and what I believe I do, and some people don't and drift away from the fellowship or drift away from the program?
I think there's two reasons for that, and they are intertwined. And the first reason is because they don't finish their amends. And so they don't ever really feel like they belong. They make a few of the big amends and then they get complacent and they don't finish their amends. And if you don't finish your amends, you'll always feel a bit like you don't fit in. But that's only part of the reason. The main reason is to stop sponsoring people. I was at a meeting the other day and a guy says to me, I'm going to stop pulling out of AA. I said, oh, really? Why? Well, I'm not getting anything out of it. And I said, I understand. I'm not getting anything out of it either. I'm not getting anything out of it. But there's nothing to get. If you come to CA or AA to see what you can get, the only thing we've got is addiction. That's the only thing you're going to get. CA has to become a place after a short amount of time where you come to give. And if you come to give, you'll find the joy of living. You'll find that you won't want to stop. The light is in the giving. And it is in that, like I said before, that feeling of uselessness disappears. It is in the giving that happens. And if you plug into this thing and you start to sponsor people and you start to, what the book talks about, create the fellowship you crave. I can't imagine my life without going to AA regularly. I mean, I go a lot. I'm 4 meetings a week. I travel around the country like an idiot, different conference every month, right? I mean, the phone rings 10, 15 times a day. What would I do? If I went in AA, I'd go home and eat Cheetos. It'd be a terrible life. It'd be horrible. So it is in sponsoring people that really the magic is. And people say all kinds of lame crap like, well, I used to do that, but now I leave it to the newcomers. Shut up. I used to do that, but here's my favorite one. Nobody asked me. Nobody asked you. How do you think you sponsor people? Do you think you raise your hand at the end of the meeting? Who's willing to sponsor? Me. Oh, well, I'm going to come around and ask you that. Nobody's going to ask you. Nobody's going to, and if they do, they're not going to call. The book says this. When it's talking to the new guy, when we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, which means it's your job to do the approaching. Hey, nice to see you. Haven't seen you here before. What's your name? Remember the name next time you see him. Hey, nice to see you again. Glad you're here. Can we swap numbers? Next day, call them. Hey, how you doing? They're afraid. They're terrified. They're not going to ask you. But you've got to go fishing. A fisherman that catches fish goes where the fish are and then puts his rod in the water. And if you stand at the bank or you stand at the edge of your toilet holding your fishing line, there's no fish in them waters and you're not going to catch no fish. So it's all about staying active and sponsoring people. And then you get a front row seat to the best show on earth. It's entertaining. Newcomers are hysterical. You're hysterical. You're not even a newcomer and I piss myself laughing when you call. They're hysterical. Thanks for letting me.
Beautiful question. Thank you, Jay. And what a great way to end the meeting.